Hello, and welcome back to the second version of Chapter 8 Notes in General Biology. Chapter 8 is on cell division, mitosis. We didn't talk much about meiosis and sex cells, but it's the same general understanding. There's an interesting part of Chapter 8 that I want to get to, and I know it's interesting for all of us because all of us are impacted by cancer, which is abnormal cell growth and family members, personally, people we know. It seems like every aspect of our society is impacted by cancer. Those who have succumbed to terminal cancers and also those who are survivors. So this is interesting talk. Now we can't go very deep into it at this level, but it's still interesting talk for us. So this is our second version of Chapter 8 notes. Well, cancer cells they show abnormalities. They have abnormal DNA. Their DNA functions differently. It's sometimes aggressive, sometimes benign. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But compared to regular, well, maybe I hate to use the word normal, but compared to normally functioning body cells, cancer cells have some distinctive features. One is they tend to lose their specialization. Your body cells, what we used to call stem cells, they are cells that will differentiate into other types of specialized cells. That's why stem cells are so important, is because they have not yet specialized into nerve cells, muscle cells, bone cells, blood cells, whatever. But cancer cells lose the ability to specialize. They're also immortal, which means they continue to divide, um, sometimes more rapid than other normally functioning body cells. And they also regenerate at the ends of their chromosomes. They produce certain portions of their chromosomes. They can regenerate them or grow them. Those are some things that cancer cells do that normally functioning cells do not do. The cell cycle that we talked about in the previous lecture, the cell cycle, remember that's interphase here in the orange and mitosis, which is in the blue. This is a cell's life cycle, moving from one parent cell to two daughter cells. That's the cell cycle. We've talked about this, that it's under tight control by the nucleus. There are uh, checkpoints, what we call chemical checkpoints, that can interrupt this process at any point in time, or maybe speed this process up at any point in time. The key is that the DNA, your chromosomes, are replicated, that they are replicated precisely, no damage, and that they line up properly. Remember, during metaphase and anaphase, they line up properly. Well, that's all driven by chemicals and memory in your DNA. And it happens trillions upon trillions upon trillions of times in your lifetime. Sometimes those checkpoints get out of control or they are no longer controlled. And we lose control of cell division. And cells continue to divide when they don't need to. And they override these checkpoints. Well, sometimes tumors are benign. We can get that here in this slide here. Sometimes those tumors are benign tumors, which are somewhat contained in tissue. Sometimes, though, they are malignant tumors, where these cells can pinch off DNA and they can transfer to other portions of the body. So benign tumors tend to be more contained, benign in their growth, benign in their invasiveness, and much less harmful. But malignant tumors are much more spreadable and much more dangerous because they can transport to other parts of the body. Cancer cells usually arise from some type of mutation. Um, that's the primary cause of mutations. They can be there are certain things that we call proto-oncogenes. These are genes in your DNA, my DNA, that show oncological tendencies, cancer tendencies. and they become very active. Something triggers a hyperactivity among these oncogenes. Also, maybe what we call underactive tumor suppressor genes, genes that are intended to suppress cancerous growth. Well, these combinations here are what tend to lead to cancerous growths in our body. Cancer risk can be caused by just genetics, ethnicity, oftentimes. There are certain cancers that are more prominent in certain ethnic groups. There are certain cancers that are passed, for instance, certain very aggressive breast cancers in women that can be passed from one generation to the next, where maybe another group of organisms, even in a group of individuals in the same community or same locale, are not passed on. So sometimes it's ethnicity, sometimes it's simply heritage, but oftentimes, and maybe even the majority of the times, cancer risk is due to environment, the environment that we live in. There are inherited mutations, and then there are environmental mutations that are caused by things, well, such as UV light is a known cause of radiation, is a known cause of mutations. So many of them are environmental. You can see some of the things we can do to avoid the risk of cancer here. Our diet, our exercise, our weight, use of tobacco, avoiding UV light, avoid using external carcinogenic substances. All of these can avoiding all of these or enhancing some of these can minimize our risk for mutations or risk for cancer. Sometimes tumors can be removed. Um, that's convenient that it can be removed by a simple procedure, but that's not always the case. Um, Sometimes chemotherapy drugs are given. My daughter is an oncology nurse here in Western Colorado. She started out with pediatric oncology in Tulsa at St. Francis and Children's Medical Center in Tulsa. And she's always worked with oncology. She's always tried to be on the forefront of oncological drugs or chemotherapy drugs. But obviously, there's side effects with drugs, chemotherapy drugs. Immunotherapy is a gene therapy that is gaining a lot of popularity in the treatment of cancers. But those are the basic treatments. We talked a little bit about this apoptosis in the last lecture. Apoptosis is programmed cell death. It sounds kind of creepy, but there are times in your body where cells need to die, and they are either poorly functioning, non-functioning, aged, what we call senescence, aging. But some cells simply need to be removed. Blood cells are removed quite frequently. Blood cells that are produced in the bone marrow of your bones only live about 120 days. And so they need to be removed. The spleen is very important in that process. And so, yes, some cells have a programmed lifespan and they need to be removed. And this is what we call apoptosis. It's um, the killing of a cell, basically. It's the seeking out and killing of a cell. Look here, there's death receptor or doomed cell um, substances that will bind to the cell membrane, be taken into the cell, executioner proteins. This sounds really creepy, but the immune system, usually a white blood cell, will engulf a cell that needs to be removed from your body. T cells oftentimes will do this. But this is apoptosis. It's very closely regulated, as you would suspect, in the body. We don't want apoptosis going wild in your body because then we're losing cells that don't need to be removed. So it's very highly regulated physiologically, chemically, and by your immune system. These proteins are, as you would suspect, very potent and they are used very precisely in your body. Your body, the immune system, the human immune system. We can't talk about it at length here, but it is a remarkable system of both protecting you from environmental invasion, from antigens, but also just protecting yourself internally as well, in the form of apoptosis. Anyway, that's really pretty much all we wanted to talk about in this second section of chapter 8. This is a good week. This week and next week before spring break, they're good weeks. They're just straight material, straight notes. Remember, take notes. Don't just use the information that's on the slides. The overall grades on Unit 1 exam were very good, very, very positive. So whatever you're doing, if you made a good solid grade on that Unit 1 exam, then keep doing what you're doing. If you did not, and there's only very few, but if you did not, then let's change something that we're doing. Let's work on taking notes on our slides. Let's work on using those smart book reviews. Let's work on those quizzes. But let's do whatever we have to do to get that grade up. But most of you did very well on the Unit 1 exam. The Unit 2 exam will come up pretty quick after spring break. So let's use these 2 weeks, this week, week 8, next week, week 9, before spring break. And let's don't go to sleep here. Don't get tired and dismissive of your tasks this week and next week. So that's all for chapter 8. Have a good week.